Hiya ladies and gents, our video today will be briefly explaining about adaptations. That is, adapting to a habitat, which is kind of like survival of the fittest. So what is adapting? Adapting is kind of like having special features that help the living organism or the living being survive and live in its environment, because we both know that our environment is ever changing, right? However, there are special places where the environment kind of stays the same. For example, caves. If you think about a cave, it's kind of a deep structure. It can have its own water supply, it can have its own living organisms that are staying in here. And its only connection with the world is a small opening. So whatever is happening to the outside doesn't really affect the environment that's in the caves. But what about the changes that are happening to the outside environment, right? How do we adapt to those? So think of a woodland. This is a woodland in the spring, and this is a woodland in the winter. All right? What do we have that happens? We have seasons, and those are the changes that we need to adapt to. We have winter, we have spring, we have summer, and we have autumn. And it's kind of a cycle that goes on and on and on. So let's take the winter. What happens in the winter? The winter is quite cold, right? And we have deciduous trees that can have large leaves. And the ground might have snow, or it might just be icy. So the tree actually can't suck up water from the ground because it will be frozen. It's winter time. So adapting to this, they will start to lose their leaves, and the leaves will come on the ground and eat beneath them and kind of be like mulch here, right? Animals, on the other hand, in winter, because it's cold, will be in either a hibernating stage like this here bear, sleeping, or they might be in stages where they don't actually have to go out and look for food, like being eggs or being in its pupa stages. But as winter passes on and it gets warmer, what happens? It comes to spring. Trees start to produce their leaves and they start to flower. And the animals that were previously eggs and pupa start hatching, and then they will go and they will pollinate said flowers. And then you have this beautiful picture right here in the springtime. The trees make leaves, and the animals that were in hibernation end their hibernation, and they will wake up. As the trees are producing more and more leaves, and it goes from warm to warmer or even hot, we enter the summer. Summer, there's the most leaves, right? And because these leaves are the most, they give us shade over the forest floor. And because there are a lot, they're actually food for caterpillars, right? So this is the time when their sun is out, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of leaves, and there's a lot of chlorophyll, and there's a lot of photosynthesis going around, right? But after its hot stage, the earth actually, or this season, gets cooler. That's when we enter into autumn, right? So at this stage, that's when the trees actually produce the most fruits and the most nuts, because it made them from that sunlight from the summer, right? That means it's feeding time for all of the animals. But for the leaves, it means that they're going to lose their chlorophyll and they're going to turn into this brown yellow color. And the tree will also release its waste products into the leaves, so the leaves will fall. All right, and that's why sometimes autumn it's called fall. This is what happens in woodland areas. But what happens in the African terrain? African terrain kind of has two seasons, the wet season and the dry season. And they have plants that are long wind pollinated plants. So because they're long wind pollinated plants, you can guess that most of the animals around them are going to be herbivores and the carnivores that eat those herbivores. But what happens to these herbivores? During the wet season, the herbivores migrate to more drier areas because it gets very wet and very muddy and very mushy. And during those dry seasons, the animals will migrate to more wetter areas or areas that have a little more rainfall. They basically move to where the plants are or to where more the soil is the most fertile for the plants. So these long wind pollinated grass or these long wind pollinated plants have their tough tops right here or in this area that will be eaten by the zebras. And then they have the more succulent leaves that will be eaten by the wildebeests. And then below the ground, they have these shoots with seeds, right? And these roots with seeds that will be eaten by the gazelles. So if this is what happens to our environment, how do plants and animals adapt to that? Starting with plants, we will be talking about the mangrove swamps. So what happens or what are these mangrove swamps? They're usually found in tropical environments and they grow in muddy areas or they grow over rivers. All right? And these rivers have tides that go up and down. They rise and they fall. So in these mangrove, what is happening? So sometimes when you actually go to visit the mangrove, the water level can be up to here and it will look like the trees are growing out of the water from the river, but that's not true because if we zoom in, there's actually tree trunks here, but these tree trunks have a bunch of different roots. And they have a bunch of these different roots. Why? Because the mud on the river floor is moving. So they have more roots and these roots all dig in deep into the ground to give it more of a hold over this moving mud. All right? And how it's also adapted is that its seed, as it germinates on the plant and it uses the humid air around it for water. And it gives off its shoot and its root, and as it falls to the ground, it falls vertical. So that when it lands, it kind of sticks its root into the mud. So you kind of see the seed with the little shoot, and the root will be below the mud. So it places a hold the moment it lands. That's how it disperses their seeds. This is their adaptation. How about adaptations in tropical rainforests? Tropical rainforests are quite thick, right? And they have a canopy layer, and this canopy layer is this said here layer. That's what you see. This is actually the top of the rainforest. What you don't see is that these tree trunks are actually very big and very long, and the floor of the rainforest is actually all the way down here, and there's a lot of shade. There's no sunlight that reaches the floor of the rainforests. So what happens to seed dispersion? Let's say this tree gave off its seed and it landed on the floor of the rainforest here. There's no sunlight for the seed to grow, and there's a lot of trees. It's going to be very, very competitive. So what happens? We have stranglers. What does the strangler fig do? Let's assume that this is a tree and it had a branch right here. That's not drawn, but I'm adding. And in this branch, there was a little bit of dead leaves, a little bit of water because it's a tropical environment and it's always raining. And it had a seed of a strangler fig. What the strangler fig will do is that it will grow off of this mulch and it will continue to expand and grow. Let's say there's another branch right here that had some mulch, another branch right here that had some mulch. It will grow to these and expand onto the tree until it gives you this network that you're seeing. This is the strangler. And this is an innocent tree that, for its bad luck, had the strangler land on it. What happens is the strangler is going to shoot up vertically to try to find sunlight. And it's going to go down to try to place its roots on the ground. As it grows and it expands, it gives you this net or this web that you see right here. And it literally strangles the innocent tree that gave it life. And eventually, this innocent tree will die. Now, you might think that's unfair and that's kind of mean of the strangler. But the strangler is actually a keystone species, and these are the type of species that help other species survive. And that's actually a very good thing because the strangler actually gives us fruits when other trees don't. So all the monkeys, all the squirrels, and all the birds that are looking for food when other trees are not actually fruiting, the strangler helps them survive. All right? So, how do animals adapt? Let's talk about animals adapting to fast rivers. So, let's talk about how animals adapt. Let's say there's a fast flowing river, and you might think that water is safe, but if you have 2 inches of water that's flowing really, really fast, it might even knock a human off their feet. So, what about these small, small animals? How do they survive in like gushing rivers? Here, what you see is a stonefly, and what you see here is called a liver limpet. So, the liver limpet has a surface that the water can glide over instead of kind of pushing onto it. And the stonefly has a flat surface and it has these legs that help it grip on to the rock that it's on or the riverbed that it's on. So the water can actually just flow over them instead of kind of push them from their place. How do animals also adapt to treetops, which where monkeys live, right? Monkeys are the closest to humans because they have opposable thumbs, but they also have tails, and these tails can give them their balance. This is a chilling spider monkey that kind of uses its tail to hang on to things, right? But if you note, the spider monkey has its eyes in the front of its head, much like us humans. So if we were to take where this eye is looking, it's kind of looking at this area, and this eye would be able to look in this area. So this is its field of vision, and the field of vision overlaps in this middle area here. And this overlap helps these monkeys judge distance. So when monkeys using their light weight and their tails and their opposable thumbs that helps them to grip on branches and leaves, jump from a tree to tree, they can judge their distance better. There's also a form of extreme adaptation. Extreme adaptation, for example, the pebble plant. The pebble plant kind of looks like this plant right here. It looks like the 2 hemispheres of your brain, right? It kind of looks like stones and it grows very close to the ground, so you can't really differentiate it from a stone. And it has these 2 spheres, right? And these 2 spheres are actually its leaves. It only has 2 leaves because it's trying to give as little of its surface area as possible to the sun so its water doesn't evaporate. And at the same time, it's spherical in shape, so it's trying to conserve and store more water. We also have the pit viper. The pit viper has these pits on either side of its head or like below its eyes. And these pits actually detect changes in temperature as little as a zero point 0.1 degree Celsius change. So it helps it hunt for its warm-blooded prey that are usually hotter than their environment. And the fact that it's in the front of its head, it's kind of like the monkey. So its vision of field overlap and it can judge its distance better, and when it pounces or when it leaps on its prey, it can have a successful hunt. If you're thinking, but its eyes are on the side of its head, if your eyes are on the side of your head, your field of vision will kind of be all around you, but you will not have an overlap, and therefore you will not be able to judge distance as accurately. That's why it would use its pits to judge distance and detect temperature. We also have tumbleweeds. And what are tumbleweeds? Tumbleweeds come from plants that are a bit woody but can grow in very windy environments. So if they grow tall and try to disperse their seeds when they're tall, they'll kind of break because of the strong winds. So what they adapted is they had this tumbleweed that is filled with their seeds inside. That is their shoot that breaks off from the plant and gets tumbled by the wind. It's tumbled, and as it's tumbled, the seeds drop everywhere, and that's its adaptation to seed dispersion. We also have the flying fish, and these are our flying fish. They kind of have wings and they have tails as well. And when they're being hunted by dolphins, these fish flap their wings and flap their tails so hard that they break through the water surface, and they can go up to 20 meters high to escape the dolphin that is attacking them or trying to eat them. That's our lesson for today. I hope you understood. And if you don't understand, do not hesitate to ask me. Bye.